I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin.
This isn't tiddlywinks we're playing.
With all due respect to Jeb Bush, this actually is tiddlywinks we're playing. Tiddlywinks is hard. On our menu tonight, the Democratic Party platter, the Bill pickle, and the saltwater Chafee. But first, family style. In our new Iowa poll with the Des Moines Register, we asked Hawkeye State Republicans, would it be a good thing if George W. Bush advised Jeb if Jeb got elected president? Survey says, actually, pretty good. Mostly good, 57%, mostly bad, 33%. But in a national poll conducted by CNN at around the same time, more than half of the respondents said that they were less likely to vote for Jeb because of his relationship to W and to HW, his dad, even though Bush 43's favorability rating is higher now than it's been in a decade. Jeb was asked again about all of this yesterday on Fox News.
I'll use my brother, my sister, every relative, every person I can. I think a campaign that's winning is inclusive for sure, and I love my brother. That's a shock for people.
So, John, if you look at our poll about Iowans not being troubled by his brother advising him, but the CNN poll as well, what is Jeb Bush's real problem with 43?
Well, there are two problems. One problem is there are specific things that George W. Bush did that are very unpopular, like launching the Iraq War. Jeb Bush got tangled on trying to answer the question of whether he would support that if we knew today what we knew, or we knew then what we know today. The second is that there are a lot of people in the Republican Party who think that being a Bush is going to be an insurmountable problem for him in a general election because of the first reason that I just suggested, and that gives him a problem with people who want to win.
He needs answers on every aspect of his brother's administration. The prescription drug benefit, Katrina, a whole bunch of things that eventually he'll have to weigh in at some depth. Some he's addressed partly, some he hasn't. But I think the other thing that his campaign is betting on, and they have to, is he needs to talk about himself. He's always going to be thought of as a Bush, but I think he can get some separation if people know more about his Florida record and see him and have a personal connection to him. There's still way too many people who've never met him and don't have any image of him.
The biggest problem for him, though, is that as we've seen in all this polling, including our Iowa poll, where he has the highest unfavorables of any candidate, any Republican except for Donald Trump, is that perceptions of him are very firmly set right now.
There's or so they seem.
Well, or so they seem. They seem very firmly set on the basis mainly of his brother, not of him. These people don't know about his record in Florida, and that creates an opportunity for him. But, boy, it's a big uphill struggle because people think of him as just another Bush.
Let's see what these same poll numbers look like in August and September.
Right. All right. Okay. In our Bloomberg Politics Des Moines Register Iowa poll, we also asked Hawkeye State Democrats if it's a good thing that Bill Clinton would advise Hillary Clinton as president if she became president. And they also thought, hey, that's mostly good. And, but, in the new ABC Washington Post poll, President Obama's disapproval rating is higher than his approval rating. So, Mark, who is potentially a bigger problem for Hillary Clinton, Bill or Barack?
If the Affordable Care Act, if the premiums are high, if the Supreme Court upsets the law, if there's unrest around the world, if President Obama's approval rating is lower, I think that's potentially a bigger problem than her husband. I think her husband, unless he creates some huge problem outside his record, is going to be a positive with a lot of voters. That's a big if.
That's a big unless.
But if you look at history, she's in a much better place if President Obama's approval rating is more like 50 and above than below 45.
Number one, really hard for there to be 3 successive terms from the same party, so she faces that. Number two, makes it even harder if the incumbent of your own party is below 50%. Political science says there's no doubt that Barack Obama is a bigger problem, but there's the scandal problem, and there's the fact that this foundation of Bill Clinton's that she's enmeshed in are a unique variable that no one else has really had to deal with. And so I think they could both be potential problems, just in different ways.
In the end, to me, if you had to bet on one or the other, 4 more years, as you said, hard, not impossible. Gore won the popular vote after 8 years of Clinton. George Herbert Walker Bush won another term for the Republican Party. But in the end, can she run on peace and prosperity? Can she run on universal health care? Yes. If the world is a mess, and she doesn't have convincing explanations of how she'd do things differently and better, I think that's a huge burden for her. I'm not predicting that outcome, but that to me is more resonant, particularly if you look now Pretty incredible. One poll, but pretty incredible. 43 more popular than 44.
Well, I agree, but look, she could spend a lot of time being distracted by potential things that are coming out of the foundation, as we've seen so far. But there's no doubt, if Barack Obama is over 50%, the economy's growing and the world is safe, she's not a shoo-in, but she's an almost prohibitive favorite to get another term. If not, she's not.
That plus the Electoral College. All right. It's said in America that anyone can run for president. Today, that proposition is being sorely put to the test for the people of Rhode Island. Their former governor and Senator Lincoln Chafee hasn't gotten much coverage on the cable networks on the day of his presidential announcement. But the local TV stations in Providence found some room in their news budgets to squeeze him in, although it wasn't always their top story.
Onto the highway. Looks good this morning. A smooth ride on that southbound side as well. Frank?
All right, Molly, some of the day's other top news stories now. This is the day former Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee is finally expected to formally announce he's running for president.
Fortunately, there were no serious injuries. Anyone with information is asked to call police.
Former Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee plans to officially announce his candidacy for the Democratic presidential nomination tomorrow.
The owners of the team have been meeting with lawmakers behind closed doors to come up with a new stadium proposal after their original one was rejected. Former Governor Lincoln Chafee is set to enter the presidential race this afternoon.
Settlement is expected to get judicial approval sometime this month.
Former Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee set to enter the race for president today, expected to make the announcement at George Mason University in Virginia, right outside Washington.
All right, not the kind of boffo local coverage you'd want. Lincoln Chafee is so obscure that half the people in our newsroom today were spelling his name wrong all day. There's only one F in Chafee. John, we've asked this question about lots of people who've entered on the Republican side, Democratic side, but this time I mean it. Can Lincoln Chafee, as a extreme underdog, impact the fight for the Democratic nomination?
First of all, I love any piece of video that includes the word paw socks and the fact that the paw socks were a bigger story than Lincoln Chafee. He is not a factor, I don't think, in being able to be really competitive. He's not really, doesn't even seem to be raising money. He has no organization around the country, not in Iowa, not really in New Hampshire. He's really running, I think, to make 2 points. One, he wants to talk about foreign policy, and more specifically, he wants to talk about Hillary Clinton, her Iraq war vote, and the broader question of whether she can be trusted. And the fact that the press, as you know, likes Clinton criticism, he will get some attention for that, and because he'll be part of a chorus with Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley, he can be part of a mosaic of problematic
stuff. The question is, how well does that chorus harmonize?
Yes.
If the three of them look like they're ganging up on her, if they're relentlessly negative, if they're repeating themselves in the formal debates, I think he will not be a factor, or if he is, he's a factor to help her. But if he opens up another front on this Iraq thing, which neither, which O'Malley and Sanders have not been stressing as much, I think it could play with her head a little bit, and he could make her weaker, allowing O'Malley or Sanders or maybe somebody else to come in.
She is perfectly happy co-opting the domestic policy issues on her left. She's going to move to the left happily to co-opt as much as she can the Warren voters, the Sanders voters, the O'Malley voters. Foreign policy is a bigger problem because she wants to maintain her position for the general election, and all of these guys are going to be critiquing her on foreign policy. Chafee will be part of that. Okay. Apparently, the finance chairman of the Democratic National Committee is helping to organize a fundraising event for Mrs. Clinton, which, if you told that to an everyday American, probably sounds fine. Except that Hillary isn't her party's nominee yet, so it seems like maybe just an itty-bitty violation of what the Marquis of Queensberry would call the rules. Then there's the debates, of which the DNC plans to sanction only 6, so far ignoring Bernie Sanders' demands that there be more. So, Mark, my question for you is whether the Democratic Party right now is playing fair in how it's conducting its nominating fight, or are they putting their thumb on the scales in Hillary Clinton's favor?
Most of the Democratic apparatus, not just the DNC, but the other party committees and affiliated groups, labor unions, Emily's List, most of them, like most of the Democratic Party, are staffed by people who think Hillary Clinton will be the nominee and want her to be the nominee.
And want to work for her when she becomes president.
One fundraiser is not a big deal. The thing they've done for her, most of all, if you talk to Democrats who aren't for her, is made the rule that not only limited to 6 debates, when there could have been a lot more, but saying you cannot be in other events if you want to be in these Democratic official debates.
Right.
That is to her advantage, because there's no doubt that, and they've said publicly, both O'Malley and Sanders want a lot more debates. The exclusivity thing is something that if it holds, the Democratic Party will have done a huge favor for Hillary Clinton.
Well, that exclusivity thing is obviously a factor in the Republican Party also, but it's a slightly different kettle of fish over there, right? You don't have a front runner, and you have a lot of not well known.
You've got more than 6 debates.
Yeah, you've got more than 6 debates.
And even
I agree,
even Scott Walker and Jeb Bush aren't afraid of debates. They're interested.
Right.
There's no doubt that Hillary Clinton's 6 debates was the fewest Democrats could get away with.
If the Democratic Party were committed to the most competitive system possible, like to creating the most opportunity for challengers to Hillary Clinton, which in some spirit of democracy you should want, you would say let's have 12 debates, and you would you would get rid of the exclusivity. You would do all kinds of things.
There are other liberal groups on the left who'd like to host debates, who in theory can't.
But let's not forget about this. Is kind of an outrageous thing. This is what this finance chairman.
He says he'd raise money for other people. Whatever.
It's still a little hinky.
The biggest thing to me is the labor unions, because they're saying they're open to endorsing other candidates. Hillary Clinton is going to get most of the labor endorsements. It's going to be interesting if some of these unions are at least not just paying lip service to the notion that they should think about candidates who are more in line with their agenda.
Absolutely.
All right. Way back in February, Mike Huckabee, the former Arkansas governor, made some comments that are now getting attention this week because the biggest story in the news, Caitlyn Jenner.
Now, I wish someone had told me when I was in high school that I could have felt like a woman when it came time to take showers in PE. I'm pretty sure I would have found my feminine side and said, Coach, I think I'd rather shower with the girls today.
Now, part of the reaction to the Jenner story this week has actually been reaction to what Huckabee said.
That's not the joke you made.
No. There would be cameras on the campaign trail if politicians didn't say among the most boneheaded things out there.
That's why we're pointing this out. This is one of the most asinine things Mike has ever done, and I like Mike Huckabee.
Obviously, he didn't mean it seriously, but I think the more important point is we should give people their dignity and let them make their own decisions. People often make decisions that I don't agree with, but in a government where it's supposed to be of the people, if someone chooses a path that's different from mine, we should respect that as opposed to mocking it or in any way trying to prevent that.
So, John, since the release of the Vanity Fair cover, the other pictures, this has been the biggest story of the week in many quarters. President Obama tweeted about it. Josh Earnest's been asked about it. You see, there's political talk. Is this a one-week cultural blip story, or is this topic more broadly going to be part of the debate in 2016?
Well, look, it is the case that issues related to the transgender community are coming to the forefront in a much greater way than they ever have before, and this is a crystallizing moment. For young people, for whom the discussion of gender as a plastic thing is a much more of salient conversation, they care about this issue. It does not present the kind of salient political policy issue that gay marriage was. I think Republicans are going to have a lot bigger problem dealing with that continuing controversy than with this, because I don't really see how this is going to rise, again, as a policy issue that they have to take a position on.
The tone Governor Pataki struck there was quite
commendable,
quite good.
Commendable.
And it'll be interesting to see Scott Walker, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, John Kasich, etc., Rand Paul, can they strike the same tone when asked about this issue? Because I think this will stay alive long enough that most of them will at some point or another be asked about it.
They would be extraordinarily wise if they did, because if they do, this issue will go away for them. If they strike the tone that Huckabee struck, it's just going to come back to be a problem for them, because I think he's going to, even among a lot of kind of right-thinking Republicans, their attitude is going to be, you know, this is not something you should be making snarky jokes about. It's just not, it's not appealing. All right, coming up. A name familiar from Family Guy, the label of a delicious marinara sauce, and the halls of the Fort Dix Correctional Institution in New Jersey. Former Providence, Rhode Island Mayor Buddy Cianci is next. This presidential race is getting good. Lots of drama, characters, and plot twists. So we're calling an old buddy, former Providence Mayor Buddy Cianci, himself a guy who is a political character and very familiar with the twists and turns that would fit into a book. And by the way, his own book is entitled Politics and Pasta, How I Prosecuted Mobsters, Rebuilt the Dying City, Dined with Sinatra, Spent 5 years in a federally funded gated community, and lived to tell the tale. Mr. Mayor, thanks for coming on the show. We're going to talk about this presidential campaign as a story. We're going to start with characters and get your take on what makes them a great character. Let's start with the first character, the latest entrant of the race today, Lincoln Chafee, your old friend.
Well, Lincoln Chafee surprised everybody. He's got about as much chance, in my opinion, of getting the Democratic nomination as you're finding a California condor, or from me being an astronaut. I don't think he's got much of a shot at all. You know, this goes a little deeper. If you want to do a plot kind of situation, remember his father was a U.S. Senator, and when Bill Clinton was going through his troubles through impeachment, this Chafee's father, Senator Chafee, John Chafee, voted against impeaching him. And then, lo and behold, when John Chafee died, Lincoln Chafee became the U.S. Senator appointed by the governor at the time. And then, guess who came in campaign against him? In favor of Sheldon Whitehouse, who's now a U.S. Senator. Bill and Hillary Clinton both came in and campaigned against him. So that's a little plot twisting there. And so Chafee's never forgiven them for that. And Sheldon Whitehouse did win by a decent majority, but I think Chafee could have won that but for their efforts. Chafee kind of surprised everybody here in Rhode Island by saying he's going to run for president because he got elected in a multi-person race with only 34 or 35% of the vote as governor after he lost the senator's job. But then he didn't even choose to run for re-election because his approval rating was in the 20s. So he didn't even run. And now all of a sudden he fades away, and now he wants to be president of the United States. Unbelievable.
Mr. Mayor, let me ask you about
I don't know if he has any supporters in Rhode Island. That's why he's probably not announcing here.
Let me ask you about a big character and a better-known one than Lincoln Chafee, which is Hillary Clinton. What do you find compelling? Just focus on her as a character, as if, again, in a book. What is compelling about her in this moment in time?
Well, she's done it all, seen it all, and bought the T-shirt. She has been there forever. I mean, she's been a fixture. I mean, I've met her several times. She came here when we started City Year. I gave her a jar of my marinara sauce. I've seen her before. She'll carry Rhode Island without any question. I mean, she has a fundraiser coming up here next week, and she carried this state, I think, with the overwhelming majority in the primary against Obama.
Talk about her personality, though, as a character now. Is she comedy? Is she drama? Pathos? What is she?
I think, you know something, I think you could write 4 novels about her. She's been through it all. The wife who was cheated upon, but she stood by her man, a world traveler, embellishing some of the stuff that she got involved in, like getting fired at by rebels and all that kind of stuff. But I think that all in all, she's become a fixture. She's like an old piece of furniture that you don't want to get rid of.
All right, another Democrat.
No matter what kind of scars it has on it, you still like it.
Another Democrat, Bernie Sanders. Would you say he's a hero in this drama so far, or an anti-hero?
Well, Bernie Sanders, I've never met him, but I've seen him when they tried to get me to join the Communist Party. But I didn't do that. But he's to the left. Around here, he's too... I mean, this is a real deep blue state. And I don't think he'll do very well here at all because they don't know him. This is a Hillary state no matter what's going to happen. But Bernie Sanders, he's for everything that a lot of people I know are not for. The guy who seems to be getting a little traction here, believe it or not, has got a committee going, and there's not a lot of electoral votes here, and there's not a lot of delegates to the Republican convention. But on the Republican side, is Rubio seems to be catching on a little bit here. You'd think that Bush would get the traditional Republicans, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Rubio's got a little organization going already, which is rare for a Republican.
Well, buddy, stick with those guys. Stick with those Republicans. Tell me, I know you live in Rhode Island. There are no Republicans there, but so you don't know that much about it. But just again, as characters, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, just go through those 3. What do you think about them?
I think that we have a growing Latino population. I think Rubio can make inroads there. I think that when you look at Jeb Bush, he'll have the traditional, most likely the traditional old waspy kind of Republican. There's still a few of those around, and he might have the party organization because of. But Christie also will have something because Christie, kind of relates to that New England kind of rough and ready kind of guy. He came up and campaigned for the Republican candidate for governor last time. So he's pretty well known here, and he's got that kind of a personality that people could catch on to. But I really think it's going to be between Rubio and Bush up here.
Does the fact that Jeb Bush has been great at raising money but not doing so well in the polls, has that surprised you? Nationally, I mean.
Well, nationally, yeah. No, it doesn't surprise me. When you got a father and a brother who was a president, presidents, I mean, that shouldn't be too tough a pull to raise the kind of money he's raising. He's got the family name. That's the family business. But that doesn't mean he's got the nomination. What did his brother say? His brother said, George W. Bush said that when he announced for president, he had all of his father's enemies and half of his father's friends. So maybe he can raise money. Bush will be the outstanding money raiser, I think, in this Republican side. There's no question about that. But that doesn't mean that other candidates, there's so many of them, can't also tap into that well that's out there. There's a lot of money around in the Republican Party.
You've had a long career. You've had some great achievements. You've had some dubious achievements. Is there anything that you're more proud of, though, than the fact that the junior high school on the Family Guy is called Buddy Cianci Junior High School?
And I don't even get paid for it. It's kind of a charitable thing on my part. They put that on there, and Seth MacFarlane went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and I think that's where he got the idea of Buddy Cianci Junior High. It's I wish I had gone there myself, to be honest with you. Great school.
Okay, Buddy Cianci, thank you so much. By the way, he wasn't kidding about that marinara sauce. It's called Real Italian Style Sauce with Old World Charm, 100% all natural, the mayor's own marinara sauce. You got to go buy that stuff. After the break, who is Lincoln Chafee? No, seriously, who is he? We'll be right back.
Former Republican, former Independent, and current Democrat Lincoln Chafee announcing tonight that he's running for president. You may be asking yourself, who is Lincoln Chafee and why watch? To answer both those questions, we compiled this brief primer of the life and times of a man called Lincoln.
Just when you think you've got him pegged, Lincoln Chafee changes it up. Exiled into political obscurity, running for president.
I don't know why it went under the radar.
Classic Link. Every other Republican senator votes for the Iraq War. He forcefully votes against it.
I believe it is wise to heed the concerns of our friends.
Then loses re-election to a Democrat.
Thank you, everybody.
Make peace with his party. Endorses Obama. Leaves his party. Runs for governor.
Rhode Island has elected its first independent governor.
Loses popularity. Becomes a Democrat.
But I never changed my core convictions.
Still the same old Link. This is the guy who turned a classics degree from Brown into a career as a racetrack blacksmith, an East Coast expat who eventually returned home to follow in his father's footsteps. Now he's running for the nation's top job, inspiring confidence in his old constituents and taking the tough questions.
Are you on drugs? Chafee, if he wasn't a good governor, how's he going to be a good president?
Because with Link, it's his party, and he'll run if he wants to.
I ask for your vote.
Another great job by our colleague Doug Krisner, and we'll be right back with the Colbert. So go online right now and Google the words Stephen Colbert shaves his beard. Trust us, it's hilarious. All right, then, when you're done with that, go to BloombergPolitics.com and watch Lincoln Chafee. Not quite as hilarious, but still pretty good.
All right, real quick, scoreboard update. Earlier in the show, I said that only Donald Trump has a higher unfavorable number in Iowa than Jeb Bush. Actually, Chris Christie's unfavorable is higher than Jeb's. -1 point for me and for Christie. Emails pouring in, by the way, about all the famous people.
Remember, we're on twice a day at 5 and at 8 until tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.